Welcome to the Cushing House. My name is Alexander Burke, and on behalf of the Board of Directors and our wonderful volunteers and our excellent staff, let me thank you for taking time out of your evening to come and visit with us here tonight. Before we get rolling, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Restrooms to your left, to your right rather, my left, through the door and then to the right, to our new modern restroom. The one to the left is old and kind of dysfunctional, which I guess comes to all of us as we get older, but anyway. And then in the unlikely event that we need, God forbid, to abandon this place, there are two exit doors, the one through which most of you came, and bear in mind, the screen door will go outwards, and then there's another exit door, which is probably all sealed up and hard to push open, but you can get out that way as well, onto our very poorly surfaced courtyard, where if you happen to be out there, for the love of heaven, don't be falling. We've applied for all kinds of grants to get that thing sort of made a little bit more smooth, if still historical. But anyway, we hope that contingency will not come to pass. Many of you I recognize, delighted to have the members joining us this evening. Some of you are not members, and if not, well, love to have you join. We're cheap, membership is cheap, benefits are extensive, and come aboard and support the society and the work we're trying to do in researching and conserving and preserving the past of the Newburys and interpreting it for the present and saving it for future generations. And whether member or non-member, we put out our little donation plastic box, and if you can feed that, it will help us keep the lights on and the heat going and all that kind of thing, and we'd be very, very appreciative and so forth. So I need to give a shout out also to the Institution for Savings, which this program is one of the many programs which the institution supports as the years have gone along. And we are grateful for the corporate sponsorship. Moving on, during Yankee Homecoming, I think we are all very pleased to take tours and view the houses in Newburyport, which Jack Santos and his wonderful team have put together, If This House Could Talk. And makes you wonder whether the rocks around the area and the stones around the area could talk. Makes you wonder also whether in the future our granite and marble and quartz countertops will be talking to our descendants, and goodness knows what gossip they're going to be sharing. But fortunately for us here this evening, we don't have to wonder what the stones have to tell us, because James and his mom, Mary Gage, have come to be with us tonight. They have worked for the last several decades viewing the stones in the area, talking to them, interpreting them, and bringing forward the tales the stones have to tell. The Gages have brought, as you have seen, some of their books, some of their publications, based on the various rocks and stones in southern New England. Two of the books in particular bear mention. One is The Art of Stone Splitting, which is fundamentally a history of the quarrying of stone here in southern New England, really from about the time Newbury was founded on for a couple hundred additional years. And the other book is the Stories Carved in Stone, the very thing about which they will most be talking tonight, touching deeply down upon Newbury and the Dummer family and the stone carvers of Lower Merrimack Valley and the various stones here in Newbury itself. So Jim is going to lead and talk and introduce us to it all, and Mary will help field the questions at the end of it all. If anybody did not happen to get a copy of the depictions and the map toward milestone markers here in Newbury. We printed some more copies and happy to have you have them. Jim, carry forward.
Everybody see the slides okay, or do we need to turn the lights down a bit? That's better.
Is that good?
I'm going to try and project my voice to the back of the room here. If you can't hear, just say something. I won't be offended. I want to make sure everybody can hear the presentation tonight. In the early 1890s, two members of the Newbury Historic Society had the job of restoring milestones 36 and 37 to their upright positions. Both stones had previously toppled over and were at risk of sinking into the earth and being lost from history. This was the humble beginnings of a century-long effort to solve one of Newbury's most perplexing mysteries. At the heart of the mystery surrounding Newbury's carved stones is their bold, decorative folk art. Who carved these folk art designs? When were they done? And why? These three questions have perplexed both historians and local residents for nearly a century. A total of 9 stones carved with decorative folk art were found in Newbury. 5 of the stones originated from a single farm in Byfield Parish. 4 of these stones were donated to the Smithsonian in 1962. And the photo shows one of the stones being uncrated upon its arrival at the Smithsonian Museum. This stone had been rescued from the mud of the cow yard. This stone is dated 1636. It was found in the barn foundation on the farm. It was originally used as a doorstep for the house. Carved on the front edge of the stone is the date 1636, 2 fleur-de-lis, and a decorative triangular design. The number 6 was formed by carving a circle and attaching a tail to it. The stone was subsequently damaged when the barn burned down, so only a small fragment of the stone has survived, and this is also currently in the Smithsonian. Like the 1636 stone, this stone, dated 1640, was also found in the same barn foundation. It has a pier of upside-down fleur-de-lis, but lacks the triangular design found on the 1636 stone. It likewise was originally used as a doorstep for the house. And unlike the 1636 and 1640 door stones, this stone had not been carted off for use in the barn. It was found in 1900, still being used as a doorstep for the house on the farm. Besides the date on the front of the stone, it had decoration on its top surface. So on the top is a triangular decoration and 3 circles with dots carved in the corners. The carving on the top was carved by a skilled carver, whereas the date 1690 was rather crudely carved. This indicates the stone was the result of 2 different carvers. This stone was removed from the farm by its prior owner, Mr. Ambrose. It was relocated to another property Mr. Ambrose owned on Coleman Road. The stone is currently privately owned but remains on public display on Coleman Road. And if you haven't gotten one of the maps, we have directions to it. You can grab one afterwards. As shown in the photo, the stone is displayed in an upright position. However, originally it lay flat on the ground and was used as stone paving in a walkway. In addition to the 5 stones found on the farm, there are 4 milestones that are part of the collection. Milestone 33, dated 1708, resides on the Governor Academy grounds. It marks the mileage on the colonial highway called the Bay Road, which connected Boston with Portsmouth, New Hampshire. B33 stands for 33 miles to Boston, and N5 stands for 5 miles to the center of Newbury, which at the time the stone was erected was located at the First Parish Burying Ground. Milestone 35 is one of 3 milestones with bold folk art designs. And the top section of this milestone is missing. It was probably the result of an early traffic accident involving a horse and wagon. And this is the 9th stone in the collection. It's the most elaborately carved of the 4 milestones. Besides this design on the front of the stone, it has mileage information and additional decorative elements on the sides and top. Then I'll show slides of these other features later in the presentation. So when we began researching this collection of 9 stones, we only had 3 clues to work with. The first clue, of course, were the 9 stones themselves and their folk art. The second clue was a 1963 article by historian Laura Watkins, who had traced the ownership of the property upon which 4 of the doorsteps and the 1 walkway stone had been found. The property proved to be the location of the Dummer family mansion house. The Dummers were a prominent and wealthy family in Byfield during the 1600s and 1700s. And the third clue came from an unlikely source. While attending an event at the Spencer Pierce Little Farm, I had the opportunity to speak with a local historic sign painter. And he mentioned he had seen the world design on milestone 37 on some of the local gravestones. So Laura Watkins' research on the Dummer family property had established who had commissioned these 9 stones. However, this left us with a question of who carved them and when they were carved. There were no surviving historical records or documents that mention any of these stones. So this meant we had to find another approach to researching these 2 questions. So each of these stones has distinct designs and design elements on them. For example, the previously mentioned whirl or pinwheel designs. Since none of these stones were signed by the carvers, it became pertinent to find other examples of their work that are attributed to a specific carver or artist. So following up on the clue about the whirls being seen on local gravestones, we scoured the local cemeteries looking for similar examples of these designs. The cemeteries proved to be full of examples of these designs. So this search of the cemeteries ultimately expanded to include Byfield Parish, Newbury, Newburyport, Merrimack, Bradford, Haverhill, Ipswich, and Raleigh. So the rural gravestone carvers in the lower Merrimack Valley were well documented by gravestone researchers, lucky for us. And so these gravestone researchers had identified the individual carvers and had determined which carver carved which gravestone. So once we had matched the designs on a specific gravestone to one of the Newbury carved stones, we could identify the carver. In addition, the rural gravestone carvers in the Merrimack Valley consistently changed their gravestone designs every 2 to 3 years. So this made dating a specific design easy and accurate. So let's take an example like milestone 35. There's a pair of shaped circles with sculpted edges, a B with elongated serifs, and a row of triangles. This particular type of B is a trademark of the Mulligan family of gravestone carvers. This narrowed the potential list of carvers. The repeated triangle design seen on milestone 35 showed up on the side borders of gravestones from 1734 to the 1736 time period. Specifically, it appears on one gravestone carved by John Mulligan Sr. And this is the border here we're referring to. So as you can see from this gravestone, the lettering is a bit odd. There's a mix of upper and lowercase letters, sometimes even within the same word. You can also note the elongated serifs on many of the letters, like the D's, the M's, and the B's. The number 8 has a flat top. So these oddities of lettering are useful in many cases for identifying a particular carver. Each carver generally had their own unique lettering quirks. Using these methods, we were able to identify the carvers as 7 of the 9 carved stones. The 1636 and 1640 door stones were carved prior to the development of the gravestone trade in Essex County, which occurred in the 1670s. So both of these early stones were probably carved by skilled craftsmen who were sharpening the local millstones. John Dunn was the third generation of Dunners to live in the family mansion house in Byfield. In 1723, John commissioned Robert Mulligan Sr., a gravestone carver from Bradford, to carve 2 memorial stones. One stone was for his father, Richard Dummer Jr., and the second was for his mother, Elizabeth Dummer. Both of these stones were private memorials and were placed at the family home. And both stones featured portrait-like carvings. However, neither of these are true-to-life portraits, as one would see in an oil painting. Instead, both of these are portraits of generic caricatures, which were widely used in folk art during this time period. Both of these portrait-like caricatures are found in ceramic mugs from this period. And the character of the full-length man follows a stylistic elements popular during the early 1700s. You'll notice that the man has a skirted waistcoat and high-heeled shoes. Anyone willing to dress like that today? Probably get arrested. So this fashion, unfortunately, at the time was very typical of the late 1600s. So these 2 stones are shown together as a pair in the drawings. Now, how do we know they were a pair? Well, the stone carver, Robert Mulligan Sr., left a clue. Both stones feature a circle with a dot in the center. Off the top here, and this stone there, and 2 down below. So this specific design element creates a symbolic linkage between the 2 stones. And none of the other 7 stones in the collection use this specific design. So the question then becomes, how do we know that the stone carver really intended the circle with a dot in the center to be symbolic? Well, both of these stones contain a second design element, a triangle. Well, a triangle type design is found on 8 of the 9 stones in the collection. This slide shows the various variations in the triangle designs found on these stones in the collection. The triangle design forms a visual symbolic linkage between all of the stones. This symbolism is all the more remarkable given that the whole collection was carved over a 90-year period by 7 different carvers. And these 2 stones feature 2 other symbolic designs. A pair of hearts, which was an expression of love, and a pair of fleur-de-lis that came from the Dummer family coat of arms, shown on the right side of the slide. So the fleur-de-lis form a link between the mother and father stone and the 1636 and 1640 stones. So we can account for all of the design elements on both of these carved stones. However, there was one major nagging question that begged for an answer. Why a memorial stone for a woman? I mean, historians have argued for years that women in colonial America had few legal rights, were relegated to the domestic household, and were treated as second-class citizens by the colonial men. So this memorial stone, commissioned by a son for his mother, contradicts our traditional views of women in Puritan Massachusetts. So as we delved into this contradiction, it became quite evident this was not the only carved stone that recognized, either privately or publicly, a woman from the Newbury community. It was one of several notable examples. So this stone was a memorial to Elizabeth Dummer by her son John. And to fully understand why the memorial was commissioned, we need to delve into the story. Elizabeth married Richard Dummer, Jr., November 2nd, 1673. Within the same year, Richard's father had deeded him the mansion house with 150 acres of land. They had 6 children. And on July 4th, 1689, Richard Dummer, Jr. died, leaving his wife to manage the farm and care for 6 children under the age of 15. So Elizabeth chose not to remarry. If she had remarried, her new husband would have become the legal owner of all the property. By remaining a widow, she retained the legal ownership of the property and protected her children's inheritance from being taken away by a new husband. Now, in 1695, her efficient management of the Dummer property made a significant impression on her brother-in-law, Jeremiah Dummer. He deeded a parcel of land, which included a tenant farm, to his young nephew, Richard Dummer III. However, because his nephew was not of legal age, he placed the management of the property in Elizabeth's care. The tenant farm was a valuable source of income to the family, and it gave Elizabeth 6 more years of income. This was important because shortly after this, John Dummer turned 21 and inherited his portion of the farm. So Elizabeth was also involved in the local community. In 1701, Elizabeth was the first person to sign a formal petition for the formation of Byfield Parish. The presence of her name as the first person on the petition reflected both her social status within the community and the prominent role she played in the political aspects of the community. So Elizabeth's son, John, would become the 3rd generation of Dummers to own the family estate. And John's decision to have a private memorial stone for his mother was motivated partially by love for her. And this is evident in the heart symbolism. He was also motivated by a deep sense of respect for the woman who single-handedly protected and successfully managed the family property which he eventually inherited. So Elizabeth was a mother, a businesswoman, and a respected member of her community. But John was not the only man to honor a woman for her social position and important contribution to the community. Mary Sawyer was the first person to be buried on land donated by her family for a community graveyard. Her gravestone was carved by John Hartshorne, and Hartshorne used his best and newest design for her headstone. Today, most of us do not consider a gravestone to be a prestigious social statement. However, in the 1700s, gravestones were an expensive commodity. A carved stone grave marker would have stood up in sharp contrast to the wooden grave markers. In addition, many of the gravestones were located besides the meeting house or on major public roads, and this puts them on public display. As if the extraordinary artwork of Mary Sawyer's headstone was not enough to honor her social status and importance in the community, Hartshorn carved a pair of fleur-de-lis on her footstone. And Hartshorn borrowed this design from a professionally carved gravestone of Colonel Pierce. And in doing so, Hartshorn took a symbol from a high-ranking military officer and placed it on the footstone of a woman. This was a profound social statement on his part. This headstone is John Hartshorn's crowning achievement as an artist and a gravestone carver. We very affectionately refer to this gravestone as the Crown Lady. This is the only gravestone Hartshorn carved that features a crown over the face, and he carved it for a woman, Sarah Wickham. The crown is up here. The only time they ever used this. This is a reproduction of the original gravestone. The inscription on the stone is intriguing. It reads, quote, Methibel, daughter of Mr. Henry and Jane Soule, wife of Mr. William Moody, promoted settling the worship of God here, then went to her glorified son William, leaving her son Samuel and 4 daughters with their father, August 8, 1702, age 38, end quote. Like Elizabeth Dummer, this inscription alludes to Methibel Moody's public involvement in her parish. Joseph Mulligan became a gravestone carver like his father and brothers. Beginning in the 1750s, Joseph began to add a bonnet or hair to all of the faces on the gravestones for women. By today's standards, a bonnet has gained negative connotations about women's roles in the domestic sphere. But in the 1750s, the bonnet had a profoundly different social symbolism. The use of a bonnet on a gravestone of a woman was another means of publicly honoring their contributions to family and community. So all of these different examples demonstrate that John Dummer's memorial carved stone to his mother, Elizabeth, was not a unique event. It reflects a broader social trend in the early 1700s of colonial men recognizing and publicly acknowledging the importance of women in their families and communities. These examples also exemplify how folk art can be a useful resource for researching social behavior and attitudes in the past. Our next story hits closer to home. It concerns how some simple folk art designs symbolize the profound political struggle that divided the town of Newbury in the first half of the 18th century. The colonial highway known as the Bay Road traversed the town in a south to north route from the Raleigh-Newbury town line to Carr's Ferry on the Merrimack River. The Newbury section of the Bay Road was approximately 7 miles long. And the first 5 miles of the Bay Road from the Newbury-Raleigh border to the corner of Green and Hanover Streets had milestones. These milestones mark miles 33 through 37. Initially, our research on Newbury's milestones focused on 3 questions. Who carved the milestones? Who commissioned them? and when were they erected? But partway through our research, it kind of dawned on us to begin asking questions about miles 38 and 39. Miles 38 and 39, which were both within the boundaries of Newbury at the time, do not have milestones. What happened to those 2 miles? Have they disappeared? Or what is the possibility that those milestones were never carved in the first place? To solve this mystery, we need to begin with the history of milestones in colonial America. In 1707, Judge Samuel Sewall of Boston erected the first milestones in the colonies. Samuel Sewall had relatives in Newbury and was related to the Dummer family by marriage. And John Dummer received word of Samuel's milestones either through direct contact or family relations. And shortly thereafter, John Dummer hired a gravestone carver, John Hartshorn, to carve milestone 33. Milestone 33 follows the typical layout format of milestones from the 1708 to 1710 time period. It uses vertical and horizontal lines to divide the mileage information. However, it includes an unusual decorative element, the double triangle symbol. As previously shown, the triangle symbolism is found in all of the carved stones commissioned by the Dummer family. The double triangle symbol was a means by which John Dummer could publicly state he was responsible for the erection of the stone. And later milestones from other towns occasionally had the initials of the person who commissioned them carved onto the stone. So erecting a milestone was a means to express one's wealth and social standing within the community. And John Dummer was no exception. It's a little hard to see the double triangles down here starting to sink a little bit into the ground. But, if you go up there, you can go up to the academy, you can see the stone, and you can actually see the double triangle a lot easier. Only the middle section of milestone 34 has been recovered. It is currently in a private collection. Its design and layout is similar to a set of dated milestones in Wenham, Massachusetts. We conducted a detailed study of the Wenham milestones, details of which are in our book. And we determined the milestone 34 was carved circa 1710. The milestone is very conservative in size and lettering. It lacks any decorative elements. And based on this evidence, we can safely say that milestone 34 was not commissioned by the Dummers. We currently suspect that the milestone 34 was commissioned by Henry Sewall of Byfield Parish in direct response to John Dummer's milestone 33. According to historian Hamilton Hurd in the History of Essex County, published in 1888, both the Dummers and the Sewall families had sought the honor of having the new parish named in their honor. And the dispute reached the colonial legislature where Judge Byfield offered to settle the matter by having the parish named after him. In return, the judge bought the new parish communion silver and a bell for the meeting house. And milestones 33 and 34 maybe a result of that little rivalry. We may never know the exact events that prompted the erection of milestones 33 and 34. However, it seems clear that things settled down afterwards. It proved to be 25 years before the next milestones would be erected in Newbury. Milestones 35, 36, and 37 were carved and erected between 1733 and 1735. In the year 1735 was the first centennial for the town. And it seems probable that these three milestones were erected in honor of that event. and all three stones were commissioned by John Dummer. These three milestones have the bold lettering and folk art designs which are unique to the carved stones commissioned by the Dummers. And as previously discussed, milestone 35 is the work of gravestone carver John Mulligan, son of Robert Mulligan. This milestone features a triangle design like many of the other Dummer commissioned stones. And it's on the very bottom, across the bottom here. Milestone 36 was the work of gravestone carver Robert Mulligan Sr. And we can identify this as Robert Sr.'s work for the unique uneven V groove he used to carve the circle and the number 6 on the stone. This manner of forming a 6 using a circle and a tail was an old style by the 1730s. The style actually dates from the 1600s. The stone also features the elongated serifs on the letter B, which the Mulligans favored. The triangle and half circle design are characteristic elements of the Dummer commissioned stones. The design seems to have been inspired by some of the earlier Dummer stones. It follows the basic pattern of the 1636 doorstep, and the substitution of a half circle design for two flanking triangles in the 1636 doorstep probably came from the mother's and father's stone. They both feature a central triangle flanked by two circles. So Robert Mulligan Sr. successfully created a new design while at the same time following the traditional design elements of the earlier stones. So finally, we arrive at milestone 37, the final stone in the series. This milestone holds important clues to the mystery of miles 38 and 39. But before discussing that clue, I would like to take a closer look at the complexities of milestone 37. This photo shows a milestone as it currently exists. It features the typical bold letters and numbers and designs we have come to expect from the Dummer carved stone. However, this is not all there is to the design. The milestone has sunken into the ground over the years, and earlier photos, which this drawing is based upon, show a design below the number 37. The design is rather crudely executed. It is the work of an apprentice in the Mulligan gravestone shop. And that apprentice was Joseph Mulligan, the youngest son of the family. This stone obviously indicates that more than one carver worked on the stone. And careful examination reveals that the opposite whorls and lettering on the front of the stone are the work of Robert Mulligan Jr., Robert's oldest son. On one end of the stone is I-10. It means 10 miles to Ipswich. It features an I with a cross in the middle, a style of writing abandoned by all the gravestone carvers in the Merrimack Valley, except for the Mulligans. On the opposite end of the stone is a notation P26, means 26 miles to Portsmouth. It features the number 6, formed by a circle with a tail, which we saw in milestone 36. We know this was the work of Robert Mulligan Sr. The single triangle below the notation is a bit of a mystery. We believe Robert Sr. broke with his tradition of not signing any of his gravestone work and signed this stone. And this would prove to be the final carved stone he worked on. On top of the milestone, we find one final design, a double triangle. It was carved with a smooth, rounded carving technique that only John Mulligan ever used. Milestone 37 contains the work of all of the gravestone carvers in the Mulligan family: Robert Sr., Robert Jr., John, and Joseph, who was only an apprentice at the time. The milestone 37 was a family affair. The creation of this stone by all the Mulligan carvers gives strong evidence that this was the final milestone in the collection. Miles 38 and 38 never received a milestone. The double triangle design reinforces that conclusion. The first mile in the town of Newbury was milestone 33, and it had a double triangle. And the final milestone in Newbury, milestone 37, has the same exact design. So the carvers left us a tantalizing clue. A double triangle design that marks the beginning and the end of a series of milestones. As historians, we must ask the big question: why was the series ended here, rather than making the last 2 miles within the bounds of the town of Newbury? Well, miles 38 and 39 fell within the bounds of what is today Newburyport. This is a significant clue to John Demer's motives for ending the series of milestones where he did. His motives are tied to whatever political issues ultimately severed the town of Newbury into 2 separate towns. As the name Newburyport implies, it was the port side of the original town of Newbury. And with any port comes extensive business and trade opportunities. A thriving business community developed in the harbor by the early 1700s. These family businesses derived their wealth from shipping, fishing, and trade. In sharp contrast, the families outside of the harbor area earned their living through the centuries-old tradition of farming. So Newbury in the 1700s was quickly developing into 2 separate and fundamentally different communities. One that was agrarian-based, and the second that was based on importation and exportation of goods. Secondly, it created 2 distinctly different social classes, the old rich and the new rich. It was only a matter of time before these differences would erupt in political issues. And ultimately, these political issues became so divisive that in 1764, the only solution was for the port side to split off and form its own town. So milestone 37, just short of the port side of the town of Newbury. It was a powerful symbol of the emerging differences that would eventually separate Newburyport from Newbury. So the Demer family left the town of Newbury an extraordinary collection of carved folk art. This is the only known collection of milestones, door stones, and walkway stones decorated with folk art found in the original 13 American colonies. 5 of the stones are still present in Newbury, while 4 are now in national treasures housed in the Smithsonian Museum for American History. These carved stones are a unique and important part of Newbury and Newburyport's history. Thank you. And for anybody who hasn't grabbed one of these maps, gives you location of the milestones and the father stone on Coleman Road. On the back side, there's some short history on each of the stones. They're free. You're welcome to take them, and we hope you'll get the opportunity to go and see a piece of your own history. So I'm going to open it up to questions, if anybody has them.
How accurate is the mileage from, say, 35 and 36?
Surprisingly, we're finding that the mileage in colonial America was quite good. Especially in the 1700s, they had professional surveyors who had accurate equipment to go out and they were surveying the roads. They knew the mileage between the towns. And so most of these stones we're finding, if they're still in their original position, are generally accurate to less than a tenth of a mile.
Do you know where the stones, the milestones were they quarried or were they just found like glacial stones or?
They're natural field stones. They are local diorite, which is a really hard granite. I'm amazed that they actually managed to carve these things versus the gravestones, which are slate and schist, which is a much softer material and much easier to carve.
Where were some of those pictures taken of the gravestones? What, like Sawyer's Hill or?
Did I take that one?
Yeah, no, Sawyer's Hill, the Raleigh Burying Ground,
Okay,
okay, they are in, the Old Hill in Newbury here,
right.
and,
First parish.
First Parish, Byfield.
Okay.
There's a few up in Salisbury, going to Salisbury Beach. They go out as far as Beverly. There's a
Really?
few, yeah. There's only a few out there, but they do go that far. The rural gravestone carvers would go about 30 miles out with them. This was about their radius. Because they're up in Haverhill and Bradford because the Hartshorn came from Haverhill. He lived up there for many years before he moved out to Raleigh. So a lot of his gravestones are up in the Haverhill graveyard. And then the Mulligans, a lot of their stones are in the Bradford graveyard. So there's good examples around the whole area.
Did you look in West Newbury at Bridge Street? 'Cause I
There's
know
a few up there.
You,
Yeah.
okay,
It's been a while since we did these.
yeah,
But yes, there's a few up there.
thank you.
What was the farm you kept mentioning?
Oh, the Delmer farm.
It's the Triton Regional School now. It's on the grounds of the Triton Regional School. And then the Coleman, the Fatherstone is on the Ambrose farm up on Colvin Road, which is not too far from.
It's on the, you say it's on the grounds of the Triton School?
It originally was. The stones were where
Yeah,
Triton
yeah.
School is now, that was the Dummer Mansion, that was the Dummer's estate. So, then
I think that's what.
the academy broke.
Used to be the Byfield Wood Farm, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, it went from wealth to completely down.
Any idea how long it would take them to carve one of those stones?
No, we have talked to some professional gravestone carvers that are recreating the original, 1700s work and by hand, and that's, in carving a gravestone is a very long, involved process, especially the lettering work on them. So I can't imagine what it took to carve the milestones. You have to imagine, because they're such a hard granite, they would have had been constantly resharpening the tools by going to the local blacksmith. So it could have taken them months or upwards of a year to carve it.
Is this folk art carving unique to Newbury, or were there examples in New Jersey, other colonies,
Within the colony,
Connecticut?
it was throughout the colonies, and most of the folk art is on furniture. And they took it, they would take their ideas and transfer it from one to the other. When you look at the gravestones, a lot of the rural stuff, you can see the basic designs of the professional gravestone carvers. And then over the years, we've looked at the furniture and found all the designs, both the professional and the rural, in furniture. And a lot of chests, not your professional ones, but more your homemade ones.
So you could see this throughout the colonies.
Yes, as far as I know.
Way in the back?
The Father Stone, is that the one that I've seen, I think I've seen it called the Witch's Stone?
Yes.
Okay.
It's also sometimes referred to as the Hessian soldier stone. There's a lot of folk stories that have been floating around
Yeah,
for years.
The Vikings with a Knights Templar or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it got the name Witchstone because people saw those decorative folk art designs and thought they were hex symbols, not realizing they were just very popular motifs in 1700s colonial society.
A few years ago, there was a man who found a stone in his wall. And it seemed like, as I remember, he may have died soon after that, I'm not sure, but those are right up about the last stone that was found, do you know?
That might be the milestone, 34.
Yeah.
It
It's the
was-
milestone, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think it had been covered over with,
It would have been buried in his wall.
yeah.
Right, and he
Yeah.
uncovered it. We did get to see, we got to photograph it, there was a drawing of it, didn't show up well in the photograph, so I did the
Yeah,
drawing
I
of it
remember
back there,
reading that.
right. He had it in his basement, the last we knew about it. We tried to get him
And do you know
to,
what year that was found?
no, I don't.
It's been
Any idea when it was,
15
when we got
years.
to photograph it?
Oh, that was good, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slide.
Yeah.
He's trying to find the slide with it.
Do we know what's become of it?
The owner had it, who found it, kept it in his basement, and that's the last we knew of it. He lives right across, it's in the house right across the street from where the replica was made.
He still lives there.
Yeah. He does? Okay, so he probably still has it.
We live a few
He
houses
carved,
away.
he
Yeah.
carved a replica of it.
Did he do it himself?
Yes.
Oh, wow, he did a good job.
Yes.
All right. And he did let us photograph it. So
He
this
did-
is
he did
a
not leave?
rendition from the actual photograph when we saw it in
And it
person.
has been replaced, it's back in its, yeah,
Okay, good.
more or less where it was.
Yeah.
No, it's a replica, it's what it was.
Right, you can see the partial 4 on the top, and then on the other side, we have the bottom of the 31. And I think the bottom ones are possibly arrows pointing to maybe Boston and then Newbury.
Newbury, Boston.
Right,
Yeah,
What do the N and B stand for?
Newbury, Boston.
Newbury and Boston.
Newbury and Boston.
And the milestones were set up to go to the center of town, not the edge of town. So we would go to the meeting house, which would be the center of town.
So I have a curiosity about milestone 35 at the corner of Boston and Middle Roads. And so we live on Orchard Street, so it is a stone that is regularly passed by. And I don't know, for the several years, there's been some sort of tributes placed upon the stone. This time of year, there is generally a pumpkin. There are
smashed in the street this morning.
Oh, it was smashed in the street.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
darn,
yeah.
no. Well, each year there is one, sometimes they get replaced. There's flowers that are generally placed on it. Do you know what
No, not from
generates
that.
that?
When I was doing the work, that wasn't happening.
I didn't know if it might have been Sylvia Littlefield from Milestone Farm, the big farm there, that happened to place those items there, but she's since died and the items are still placed.
Could be Ricky.
Didn't know, what it could be, then it's gonna remain a curiosity.
Yeah. This gentleman over there?
Is the mother's stone visible if one went to the Smithsonian?
We have not been down there to ask,
Yes.
but I think if you were to, the only way to do it to find out is if you were to inquire before you went down. If we could, I'd love to see it. I just haven't made the trip down.
Gentleman way in the back corner?
Yeah, I'm curious, I think it's mile 37. You mentioned at the end that there's imagery that's sunken into the ground.
Yes.
Just wondering if there's any suggestion to raise it or reset it how it originally was.
I think that'd be great. That one seems to be in a spot that's soft, because unlike 35 is staying up and 36 is staying up. But 37 is continually, it gets put up and then it gets back down, drops down.
Yeah.
So it has to have some soft ground. Probably have some gravel or something put underneath it, bring it up and put some gravel under, something to keep it up. It would be great to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost sunken out of sight in the 1890s when the members of the Newbury Historic Society then, went about having it lifted up and reset. We might be coming up on another time to do that again. I just don't know what that's going to entail in terms of permits and costs.
So my follow-up question, who owns the stones? Was it the town of Newbury or?
That
Is
is,
anybody from
That
Newbury
hasn't-
that knows?
that came up a few years ago and nobody's entirely sure. Well, these stones are technically within the town's legal right-of-way on either side of the road. But, some of the people whose property that bought it have, claimed ownership, so I don't know where that whole discussion ended up.
I think it's something you have to bring to the town.
Where is your book available?
We have some tonight here, and we also have it online. We have it,
Yeah.
yes.
There's quite a lengthy story from the old Byfield fire chief about hunting for the 34 stone.
Yes.
And are you familiar with it at all?
Yeah, they dug up a culvert up on the road thinking it was in that.
And the psychics brought in from
Oh, is that right?
The psychic brought in from California
Wow.
to look for it when they were looking, and because he had been the hired contractor to dig up the area looking for it.
I'm glad they finally found it. It is, some questions. Yes.
Do the designs have any particular symbolism, or are they simply designs?
The symbolism on the fleur-de-lis, that goes back to the drummer, coat of arms. But beyond that, no, it's just folk art. That the carvers used it to link the stones. They did that, as what they did with the hair on the women. They found ways to use their designs beyond just being plain folk art.
Are there any other stones that, that have the mileage from Portsmouth and Ipswich? This one here, is that one of another series, like another road or something, or did?
No, if you go down to Wenham, Hamilton doesn't have anything. If you go down to the town of Wenham, they've got 3 stones. They're only 2 miles wide, but they put it every,
Half mile.
half mile, right. They were very proud of theirs,
Yeah,
and they still have them up down there. The Ipswich has one.
Right, see, it's very, since a lot of these milestones were privately commissioned, it's sort of up to whoever was paying the carver.
Okay.
And some of the stones are more elaborate than others, some contain more lettering than others, and as far as we've heard, when you're paying for these stones, a lot of times they're paying by the letter. So some are very highly abbreviated, and others are much more elaborate, things more spelled out.
And the one of the ones in Wenham has DD on it. And I forget who, we found the person, that's the person who commissioned it. And we were able to eventually figure out who that person was, I forget now.
Any more questions? And a quick note that we have the Gage's books on display here and for purchase, and we have some back in the grotto. So come, look, review, buy, that kind of thing. Meantime, Mary, Jim, thank you so very much.